Well, hello everyone, and thank you for coming to the webinar. It's great to have you. My name is Lynda Bunnell, and I've been involved in human design for quite some time now, and I'm just happy to be here to share Rave Anatomy with you. So I'm just going to go ahead and get started. Okay, Rave Anatomy. What is Rave Anatomy? Well, Rave Anatomy is a collection of graphics and keynotes that Ra created to illustrate his writing from the Book of Letters. He called this work Rave Anatomy, Mapping the Mechanics of the Maya. And Rave Anatomy has been graphically updated and was released in 2008. And it all started from the black book that you see on the screen at the top. That was the original writing of the human design system after Ra had his experience. And then later he put out the From the Book of Letters, which was an expansion of the original book. And since then, he has, so that's where Rave Anatomy came from, was really him in his process of his exploration into the body graph. So he did a course in 2008, and he just went deeper and deeper into the body graph to really bring out the details of the body graph. So and he also went into areas that he hadn't gone into before, like gates of gender differentiation or the body graph's memory network and various other things. And so for the first time since 2008, this lecture, it's actually 22 lecture course, and the illustrated ebooks are being released to the general public through Jovian Archive and IHDS. Now, for those, I kind of thought I might have the question of where can I get copies of the black book and the white book. And so I put up the Human Design America website because they do offer these books. If you'd like to get these books, they're quite nice to have since they are original, the original material from Ra. They're very special, actually. I cherish mine. So if anybody's interested, that's where you could go to get that. Now, Rave Anatomy, what we're talking about today is we're talking about a self-study course. And it is a home study course. It's 22 audio lectures, 21 hours and 21 minutes. There's two beautiful ebooks. They're proofed, edited, illustrated, 350 plus pages. And the ebooks track right along with the audio lectures so that you can listen and look at the illustrations as you go through this self-study program. And in addition, Jovian is making available 3 videos, and they're all about the substructure, the base, the tone, the color, which will help with the understanding of some of the material in Rave Anatomy, especially the very first lecture, I think, which is available for download for free, so you can get a sense of some of the material that's in Rave Anatomy. And then I'll give you some more information at the end of the webinar. But today, what I wanted to do is just give an overview of the program, just briefly review each lecture, discuss a few of the lectures in more detail, some of my favorite topics, and provide information to sign up for the self-study program, answer a few questions if we have time, and then just to let you know, we should be together for about an hour. We have a lot to cover in that hour. So let's just go ahead and get started. Some of these images are really beautiful. They were originally created by Ra in 2008, and then Jovian, through Ra's son Loki, updated these images for our purposes here, and just kind of tidied them up a bit so they're much nicer looking now and updated. But basically what we're looking at in lecture 1 is the senses of the body graph. BodyGraph, and I think it's important that we all understand that the vehicle that we ride in, this body, is a sensory machine. It picks up. Oh, we already know that, but it picks up things. Obviously, we hear, we see, we feel. There's touch. There's all of these things: smell, taste. But then at another level, at the tonal level, there's something else going on underneath that has to do with our cognition. And so throughout all of these lectures, Ra talks about how important it is. He starts with this, which I think, but when I first thought about it, I thought, why did he start with this? Because it's a little bit more complicated, but I actually think it's perfect that he started with this because it all comes back to this. It really does. For us to be fully self-expressed as we are meant to be, to have the correct identity or purpose in life, whatever you want to call it, it really does start with our cognition and how we take in the environment around us. Not only how we take it in, but being in the right environment, right? And nourishing our body in the way that it's intended to be nourished so that we can take care of these very special senses that we have with the body, which aligns us to our trajectory in life. So it's very important. So this is what this particular lecture one is all about. And I just put out some quotes by Ra that I'll read to you. It's in thinking about the nature of being and life itself, the underlying theme of this whole program is to achieve self-reflected awareness. All of that is only possible through cognition. And the tone represents our cognitive architecture. It sets the foundation, the underlying foundation for one's design. If someone is not self, they are cut off from their cognition, from their own architecture. And that's really profound. When we're brought together in this illusion of being, we are deeply connected to an inner frequency. The frequency is in relationship to the magnetic monopole, which we'll talk more about a little bit later. The magnetic monopole is an attraction frequency for the crystals of consciousness, and it pulls their information together to create this holistic form. So it holds us together in this experience that we're having in this body. The design and the personality side are held together by this magnetic monopole. And the monopole responds to the frequency of the form at the same time that it holds it together. It's a biofeedback or a frequency feedback system. The monopole is always attracting and in its work holding together this totality. So strategy and authority, which we all know about, immediately aligns the vehicle to what is correct for it, immediately brings it in touch with its cognitive resource. If you take all these streams and then you move them into their circuits, the first thing to recognize is that the BodyGraph is a sensory system, period. The BodyGraph is our body, right? So it's nothing but a sensory system. This is us. We are filters of consciousness. We are incredibly powerful sensory mechanisms. These are the tools that are there to keep us alive, to keep us alert, to keep us in touch, to give us the possibility of going beyond the homogenized field and beginning to experience the treasure of what it is to be us, to be uniquely us, I should add, to be uniquely us. So that's what his lecture one is about, which I think is a great foundation for the rest of Rave Anatomy self-study. Lecture two, he talks about the word. That's the name of the lecture, the word, where he talks about the throat center. And the throat center, and I'll probably sound like a broken record here when I talk about how important all these aspects are. But again, it's critical to understand the throat center because everything moves toward the throat center. So the center at the top is a pressure center, the center at the bottom is a pressure center, and the movement is toward the throat center. And here we're living on this planet where manifestation is a big part of it, establishing civilization. And all the gates in the throat center are in the quarter of civilization, where we bring things into form. So it's very important to understand how the throat center functions, how it operates, and how it operates correctly within each of us. And I remember being in a class with Ra in 2001. This is when I was getting my teacher certification, and I was in Germany, and he was teaching a class about the BodyGraph, a specialized class about the body graph, and he was talking about the sacral and the throat center. And he said the sacral is the how, and the throat center is the what. And you know how we ask children, what do you want to be when you grow up? You know, and that's where the what comes from. And you can look at somebody's throat center and see what they want to be when they grow up, or what they're designed to be when they grow up. And the how is sacral center. So these are the workers, these are the generators that have sacral definition. They have the how to get it done. But the throat center, you know, it's here's where we're going. This is what we're doing. And also we have primary gates of action. As you can see with this illustration, it's the 35, 12, 45, and 20. Those are the gates that are the actual primary gates of action. So in this lecture, Ra takes you through all of these different gates, how they operate, what their purpose is, what their function is. And obviously it's a great lecture. So, and that goes into lecture 2 and 3. So the throat center is about manifesting. These are the gates in the quarter of civilization, as I said. It's about establishing and maintaining the form. And also talks about, where does your voice actually come from? We all think that we speak what our mind, but in actuality, if we look at these gates in the throat center, you know, you've got where's this energy coming? Only 3 of them are pointed up at the area of the mind, and the rest of them are pointed down into the body. So our voice comes from other places other than the mind, right? It's an emotional voice, or it's an ego voice, or it's a self voice, or it's a splenic voice. You know, it's different voices. So he talks about that in this lecture, which I think is great. So lecture 4, Rave Anatomy 1, we're still in Rave Anatomy 1. There's 2, 1 and 2. This is where we talk about the gates of fear. And he goes through and talks about each of the fears. These are the awareness centers: the ajna, the ajna, the spleen, and the solar plexus. These are the awareness centers, and we need fear to drive awareness, and that's why we have these fear centers. They teach us, and we learn from these fears. So he goes through each of these. Excuse me, I'm on to the next lecture. This is lecture 5. The 9 fuels. These are, this is the root center, and the 9 fuels that are coming out of the root center. He goes into great detail about these. They're very educational. I think he starts this lecture off by talking about just how powerful the root center is. I like to kind of think about it, or to try to get my point across when I'm talking about the body graph and orienting people, is that the root center is like rocket ship. It's like this image that we're looking at is like a rocket ship, and the fuel is coming out of the root center. And it really is powerful. And Ra makes a point of saying, you know, the root center does not connect directly to the throat center, because it has to be stepped down between the solar plexus, the sacral, and the spleen before it gets to the throat, because it is so powerful. It's just, it would probably burn up. So it is like rocket fuel. And if you have an open root center, my recommendation is to pay special attention to this lecture. I know a lot of people that have open root centers, and they end up burning themselves out. And this governs the adrenals, and it connects to the hormones, and everything can really get messed up in your body if you allow the root center to drive the life. And many people that have an open root center, you know, this is a lot of where deep habits and addictions come from. You know, we can get addicted to a lot of those qualities from the root center. So I would pay special attention to that. I always try to make a point of that when I'm talking to people about their design if they have an open root. I have many friends and acquaintances that do, and I've seen the damage that it can do if you are allowing this habit to run your life. And it's a very difficult habit to get your arms around. You know, it's one of the most difficult. You know, habits are habits. they're unconscious. We're not even aware of them. They're just happening. So if you can really get a sense of, am I eating too fast? Am I driving too fast? Am I rushing around? Am I letting everybody else's emergency drive my life? What is happening here? To really take a look at that can be very beneficial to you. In lecture 6, Ra talks about this magical gate, this gate 3, difficulty at the beginning. This is the power of mutation. This is actually a really amazing gate within the BodyGraph. As you can see, the fuel to the 3 comes from the 60, as you see in this image. And so and this is a channel. This is one of the format channels, which is a very powerful channel. And it drives mutation, change. It operates in a pulse, and all of a sudden there's change there. And then the 3 is the one that puts order to that change. And we've all had abrupt change in our life, where we've had to adapt to something. And the 3rd gate is really about that ability to adapt, and Ra goes into a lot of detail about that. So yeah, this is a very fascinating gate, and not only that, but it's also the gate that is involved in gender differentiation, which is lecture 7. And gender differentiation, these are the gates that make up, or that play a role in gender differentiation. And in this lecture, Ra talks about how the 3rd gate actually establishes whether you're a male or a female. And then he goes through and talks about the differences between, how he gives a broader understanding of the illusion of the male and female. That's what I was trying to get, that word illusion, because at the surface level, there's this illusion that we're male and female, but underneath that, we're not, we're just beings, right? Having experience here. So, and he talks about the relationship to the amino acid and to the 8th Godhead, the face of Janus, which is the 2-headed God, which I thought was fascinating. 2-headed God, male, female, so very interesting, and how the 3rd gate determines the gender. So, he discusses all of the gates associated with the illusion of the male and female. So that this is a fascinating lecture. I took this course in 2008 with him, and so now here I am 8 years later, giving myself a review of it, and it's always fascinating about how much I forget, or I'm an emotional being, so I hear in the wave, and 8 years have gone by, and I go back to this lecture, and human design is a gift that keeps on giving. I mean, it was like listening to all of it all over again, brand new. It was wonderful. Lecture 8, he talks about the memory network. Again, another very fascinating lecture about how memory plays such a role in our existence. And he goes through and talks about each of these memory gates and how they work within the BodyGraph and how they affect our lives, the way in which we're designed to be controlled by memory. And memory is the bedrock of our self-reflected consciousness. Without memory, there's no potential for humanity to transform. And a distorted memory is a distorted life, which takes me back to the very first lecture in this series. If we're not following our strategy and authority, or nourishing our body the way it needs to be nourished, or our body's not in the right environment, then everything gets distorted. Even our memory gets distorted. So, he says we are chained to specific positions, philosophies, moralities that keep us locked into homogenization. So this is a fascinating journey through the memory network. Lecture 9 talks about, it focuses in on the splenic streams. Actually, 9, 10, and 11 talk about the splenic streams and the emotional streams and the mental streams, all of those things. So you can see when you look at the BodyGraph how through the stream. Here we have the fuel, and in an earlier lecture he talked about the fuel gates. And then here we have what is called potential, and then we have possibility. And then over in the heart center, we have the mechanic, and then the expression through the throat center. So this is one of the things he said, that he had a real love affair with the mechanics of the BodyGraph, specifically the streams, because it was real key to mastering an understanding of the BodyGraph and the energy and how it flows through the BodyGraph. So here's an image of the ajna streams, and he'll take you through the understanding stream, the knowing stream, the sensing stream, through all of these things, and also solar plexus, again, taking you through all the streams through the solar plexus. So you'll get a really good feeling and understanding of the centers, the gates, the channels within these streams. So that takes you through Rave Anatomy 1. There are 11 lectures in Rave Anatomy 1. And, as I was going through this and reviewing it, and I was thinking, wow, just one of these programs, just one of these lectures is something to contemplate for a long time. You could take one of them and study it for quite some time, and to really digest it all. I mean, look at the information that's here. It's incredible. So as we move into Rave Anatomy 2, Lecture 1, Ra talks about the centers of sacral resistance, which I found this quite fascinating. Here I thought, what is sacral resistance? What do you mean by that? And we have the centers, the heart, the ajna, and the head center, that are not connected in the to the sacral center directly. See, all these other centers are connected to the sacral center, but the heart, the ajna, and the head are not. They're left out. And so there is this resistance that gets developed. The sacral is the key to life as the generative source. The head, the ajna, heart center are centers of sacral resistance. And Ra was told, oh yeah, this is interesting, and I'll talk a little bit more about this as we go, but Ra was told that if there were a channel between the heart and the sacral centers, there would be no death. So he says that terminality is embodied within the heart center. So the basic drive for life is being conditioned by the sacral centers of resistance, by the collective and tribal demands. So in other words, 70% of the planet is sacral defined, generators, manifesting generators. And so then you have these 70% of the planet is here to respond, right? They're here to respond to whether or not they have available energy for something or not. But we have the demands of the tribe, which come from the heart center, and we have the demands of the collective, right, head and ajna, that are saying, do this, do that, be this way, be that way. And but that's not how my sacral is responding. And I'm sure that there are many people listening here that have had that. I mean, I still have that going on. I have family demands. My sacral says, but these are demands, and that comes. So we're always in this sort of push-pull dilemma with that. So that's why they're called sacral centers of resistance, because they really do, take us out of that. So I thought that was a really good and very informative lecture. Lecture 2 is about the left, right, and inner hearing. And this is kind of a fun one to understand how best you're designed to hear. For me, it's my left ear. And also the inner hearing, which is interesting. Many people on the planet are designed for inner hearing. They're not here to be, they're not here to be influenced by outside sources. These are individuals. They're really here to listen to their own inner hearing. And I don't know if you guys have had the experience of this or not, but I have a close family member that has all inner hearing, and I'll be talking to her, and I can tell she's not listening to me, but she's listening. And then all of a sudden she'll say something, and it's completely off topic, at least my topic. And then I'll kind of chuckle inside, going, "Oh, she was doing an inner listening, and on the surface, it sounds like she wasn't listening to me. I wasn't being heard. I can do the blame shame game, but what was really going on is that she was doing some inner listening, and then she blurted it out. She had no idea, and so it's kind of puts things in perspective. I think that's what I love about human design is that it takes you away from the blame shame game and puts you into understanding and acceptance, so that we know how people are wired, we know how they are, and so there's just a whole different interaction that we can have, a whole different conversation that we can have. So that's a good lecture, a really good lecture. Lecture 3, you can see that Ra returns to the root center again, because it's so important to really get your arms around this. And he talks about the 9 fuels of the root center. So and he's not repeating the same thing. He's got even more information to share with us about these 9 fuels. Very, very good. And lecture 4, he talks about the fork in the road, which is interesting. When we reach the heart center, this is all energy traveling through different centers, right? And I told you before, the root is trying to get to the throat. So as the energy travels up and goes to the heart center, there's a choice for energy to go up here to the material way or the spiritual way. And so Ra takes the time in this lecture to really talk about this and talk about the significance of this in humanity, in our world. And I find that to be really fascinating. It's really about tribal rulership or the religious spiritual rulership. Not one is good or bad or whatever, but it's just putting it in perspective, and then how this is all going to relate to the cross of planning, which is our background frequency right now that we've been living in for a long time. This cross of planning is changing to an era of individualism. So he touches on how this will affect that. So so it's a very good lecture. All of these are incredible. And now we come to this mechanics of immortality. And this takes us to very interesting. One of the things that I really like about these lectures with Ra is that he often talks about his experience in working with this knowledge for the years that he did up to 2008. I don't know if that would have been 20 years, or I can't count them right now, but the work that he did, and you can imagine how it had evolved within him, his understanding of how it evolved within him. But one of the things he said is that he was told when he had his encounter that there was sort of a hookup available, but it wasn't present in our 9-centered forms, but it's sort of there. There's receptors for it in the BodyGraph, and this is a connection between the heart and the sacral, so that when we do get to the stage of our evolutionary process, that we will go from being a bioform. We won't be a bioform anymore like we are now, but we'll be a silica-based immortal entity. Now, this sounds very science fiction, and there's more about the Eron in rave cosmology I can't think of the name of the actual program right off the top of my head, but if anybody wants to know more about it, you can just email me and I'll tell you where to get it. But it's fascinating information about where we're really headed. He talks about it here, and then it's elaborated in much more detail in cosmology. But so our current form is limited in terms of our ability to develop the purity of awareness. See, our bodies can only handle so much consciousness, these 9-centered bodies. And so part of the process of just being in physical form is to develop the physical form to a place where it can handle all the consciousness that's available, I guess is a way to say it. So we are limited to the purity of awareness. But in these new forms, it will be able to handle the purity of awareness. So it's just a really fascinating lecture. It talks about transformation and evolution comes from the form principle, being connected to the correct trajectory of the form principle. We get to experience our cognitive potential. That's being repeated throughout this entire Rave Anatomy program because it's so critical. I mean, one of the things I think that one of the big takeaways from this self-study program is how much to love and respect the body. I mean, it's why we're here, right? And how important it is for that. And strategy and authority is all about eliminating resistance to the form so that you can live in a healthy body and then be all that you're here to be, right? I mean, that's what it's all about. That's what human design is really all about, teaching us how to do that, or that we can do it. And now we just have to do it if we want to do it. So anyway, so what he's talking about is this new silica-based entity, form, whatever. It will filter the neutrino ocean or filter consciousness in a very different way. So it's it's a great lecture. And then lecture 6, lecture 7, and lecture 8 go into these awareness areas. He covers it again in more depth, more detail. These awareness centers are very important for us to grasp and understand. They're deepest areas of conditioning. These are the areas where we carry the deepest areas of conditioning, where we have the most work to do on these particular areas, right? This splenic is all about holding on to things for survival. So our mind thinks we need it, so we hold on to it. And the solar plexus, we don't want to rock the boat. And I mean, there's just so much to talk about. So this lecture 6 goes into all of that detail, and it's great. Now, lecture 9, the mystery of the G. This is one that I wanted to take a little more time with. It's one of my favorite topics. And anything I can ever get my hands on about the G center or the magnetic monopole, I love to look at deeply. I have a completely open G center myself, personally, no gates. And that's probably why I have a fascination with it. But it tells so much about the mechanics of who we are and why we're here and all of that. So I'm going to take you through a little bit of that. According to the voice and Ra, the biverse came into existence through the action of the magnetic monopole. The monopole holds everything together. Everything is expressed through the monopole. The monopole has a capture frequency or capacity. And he says dark matter is the vast majority of the mass of the totality. It holds everything within it. And it is a continuity. The monopole is never separate from anything. The monopole pulls things together and moves them. So the red and the black represent two components or ways in which the movement from the beginning evolved. These two ways led to a juxtaposition in which life emerged. So that's why it's called a biverse. There's a juxtaposition in which life emerged. And the magnetic monopole operates out of the G center. It sits right about where the second gate is located. It's the gate of the driver. So it's the sternum, if you want to know where on your body that it sits. It's right in the sternum. And it holds this illusion together, and it takes us on a trajectory, and it captures the people, places, and experiences that we're designed to have in life so that we can take in what we're here to take in, so that we can then possibly become an outer authority for others based on our experiences and based on what we've learned from what we've taken in. So just think for a moment how important it is to be in the right place at the right time, so that we're taking in the things that we need to take in. The G center, the 8 gates in the G center divide the wheel. There's 2 um, incarnation crosses in the G center, the cross of the Sphinx and the cross of the vessel of love. So it's about direction and it's about love. It's about direction, but it's about love. And when we incarnate into the body, the monopole resides or rides in the design crystal, right? And the personality crystal, when we're in body, sits right above here, above the head center. And the design crystal sits in the ajna. And then when we incarnate into the body, the monopole leaves the design crystal and lodges itself in the sternum at some point in the development of the fetus, right? So you've got this separation of the monopole from the design crystal. And that separation creates the illusion of separateness. So we're all searching for our identity, for our love, for our direction in life, because we feel, we're in this illusion that somehow it's missing. But the truth is, the monopole is actually pulling to us everything that we need, everything. And that we are just passengers in this vehicle. We are just passengers. So we're talking about the body at being a sensory mechanism, right? And it knows, in the 9-centered vehicle, it knows how to take care of us. It knows what we need. It knows where we're going. And the passenger, is just kind of kicking and screaming, going, what? Where are you taking me? I want to be in control. Well, that's the 7-centered. That was before the 9-centered being. 7-centered controlled from the ajna, controlled from the mind. But we're not in those bodies anymore. So, and that's why human design is here on the planet. So, anyway, these eight gates are very important gates, and Ra talks about that more in detail in the lecture. Now, yesterday I was digging around in some old files about the monopole, and I found this image that I just love. It's an image that Ra created, and here is the monopole sitting at the center of Earth with all the 8 gates coming out of it, and I just thought, I want to show everybody this image. It's such a cool image. So, the monopole is the expression of the identity of the potential of the individual and the identity of the Maya itself, right? So it's the magic that brings all of this together, the magnetic monopole. So talking about homogenization for a minute, the true identity of the Maya is distorted, right? I think we can all probably pretty much agree with that. We know that the totality is homogenized. The true nature of our identity is something that is hidden. And the majority of humanity has no idea we are not the same species that we were before 1781, as an example, right? They have no idea. And 1781 is the beginning of the identity of the species actually having a potential to emerge as new identity, as identity that is very, very different from homogenization. Wow, that's a mouthful. And this is why human design is here now. The identity begins to be transformed when we begin to function correctly. In fact, your holistic identity is something that you find in your cross, in your profile, in your motivation, in all the different aspects that make up the holistic you. You find the bits and pieces that synthesize as your identity. Once you bring all these pieces together, and then you're on the correct trajectory via strategy and authority and the correct nurturing of your body and the correct environment, then your true identity can unfold. So, and there's a few quotes here from Ra that I just wanted to share. Human design brings something that the 7-centered being could not grasp, that we are a binary consciousness out of a binary root, programmed by a binary system. And the illusion of us being holistic, well, as I said, underneath, no matter how much you want to see this as a unity, it is always a binary, and yet it is able to be held densely enough together here by the agency of the monopole to bring about the phenomena of what we call our lives. So underneath this unity. Underneath all of that is this binary. A strategy and authority brings that binary together, to bring it together as a holistic being walking on the planet. So just some further quotes by Ra. It is only in our awakening to this duality, it's only in this that we begin to define ourselves as nine-centered being. This is what makes us different. What makes us different from all of our predecessors is a recognition that there is a consciousness that operates within us that is actually there to be able to take care of most of the things that we have labored with unsuccessfully all of our lives at the mental level. Yeah, I thought that was a very important statement for people to grasp. We're not in control of things at the mental level. We're just not. Our body, our sensory system takes care of it. And he goes on to say, I remember those moments at the very, very beginning of my process in 1987. Some of the very first people who got to look at what I was doing wondered, what is the second calculation? You know, the design calculation. And why is it 88 degrees? What is that? Out of the astrological tradition, all of them could accept some kind of breakdown of analysis rooted in birth time. But there was this other thing. What the hell is this other thing? This so-called design. And this is the beginning of the awakening of the nine-centered being. And it's not about mental concept. It's not about saying it's there, believe in me. It's about saying, hey, look, it's there. Try this. You'll see for yourself, because it's a mechanism. It's a consciousness that rules a vehicle's mechanism. You know, from the beginning of my involvement from human design, Ra said, don't believe me. Don't believe anything I say. Just try it, and you'll see the mechanism at work. And I just think that that's a beautiful thing. Now I got to get my slide to move forward here. Human design teaches us about strategy and authority so that we can allow our true, unique identity to emerge. It's about positioning. We are intended to be in certain places. When we are in the correct place, we get the correct experiences. When we get the correct experiences, our true identity can emerge. The G center is like a catcher. It catches the experience to establish that unique, special identity. But if we're not correct, the frequency isn't correct, and then we don't develop our true identity. It's then distorted out of tune. The G center is the center of our tuning. I really like that statement. The G center is the center of our tuning. The great mutation. Enlightened selfishness is a way to achieve unique identity. Enlightened selfishness. He really liked that term. The human design knowledge is end knowledge. It's the closing of an extraordinary process. We are here to bring this duality into harmony. The union between personality and design brings resonance. Of course, strategy and authority is the key. So, yeah, love that. Love that. The whole thing about studying the G center is just amazing. Okay, check my time here. Okay, I'm doing good. The lecture 10, that was lecture 9, went into a little more detail with it for you, and I hope you enjoyed that. Lecture 9, he talks about the history of types, and this is an evolutionary view, which I really enjoy this. You know, the movement from reflector to manifesting generator to manifester. Out of the manifesting generator came the generator. Out of the manifesting generator came the manifester, and then the projector. So let's take a look at that. We started with a reflector. No defined life force, just completely open. He says this was 90% Neanderthal, and then another 10% was manifesting generators. So we had 90% reflectors, 10% manifesting generators on the planet. And then out of the manifesting generator, as we evolved, came everything else. So the pure, powerful responding mechanism, gate 34, and the start of uniqueness. So out of the manifesting generator came the manifester and the generator. And this triggered the seven-centered being, the mind. So the seven-centered being before 1781 was all about developing that Ajna center. It was all about developing the mind and controlling the world through the mind and creating the world through the mind. So we had the five-centered manifesting generator that was pure and receptive and correct. We had the seven-centered manifesting generator that created the whole frustration process because the mind became the ruler and tried to establish the identity, forcing the body to do what the mind wanted to do. And of course, in that, all of the dilemmas that would arise and create homogenization. So now you can see the evolution of all of this. And then where are we going now? So manifestors then dominated generators due to their ability to act, right? They enslaved them basically. And in 1781, the projector emerges out of the manifestor. The manifestor power no longer served the totality, right? The voice told Ra that this is a really important era right now. We are in the projector era. I just get chills when I say that. The projector era is a deep refinement of the movement toward the coordination of identity and its movement towards surrender. So projectors are here to be working on organizing humans into groups and working with those groups to develop intelligence out of those groupings and develop intelligence out of those groupings. This is what they're really designed for, whether they're doing that socially or whether they're doing that as a profession. Whatever the case may be, one of the things to really grasp about projector is that it's moving us toward the rave or the penta as a species. It is a master in that sense, given its gifts of recognition to be able to prepare us for the future. Projectors are the new kids on the block. What is it about the projector that is an essential ingredient to establish the true identity? They bring forces of recognition into the matrix. You know, and we keep hearing about projectors, recognition, what does that mean? But if you just pause and take that sentence in for a minute, they bring the forces of recognition into the matrix. Wow. This is their greatest gift, after all. And because they are not oriented within themselves, that is, they don't ride on a sacral, they are looking outward. And it is this looking outward, this ability to recognize and to guide others to recognize, that brings a special quality. So projectors are here to guide others to recognize. What does that mean? And how does that work? You know, that means that through the encounter between a projector and a generator, the projector, without an agenda, can ask questions to the point that they get the generator to recognize. What do they recognize? They recognize their own truth in terms of what they have energy for or not for, if you know what I mean, or who they are. You know, generators are here to know themselves, right? So projectors can help them to recognize themselves. I just thought, I just love that statement. To guide others to recognize. Very good. So everybody should applaud the projector. And it's not an easy road for the projector because they are the new kids on the block. They've only been here a short period of time and they're still learning how to work all this. You know, how do we work this? How do we recognize and be recognized and get involved in, you know, how do we play the game or whatever it is, you know, how do we get in there with generators? And yeah, it's an interesting thing to contemplate and to think about. So yeah, anyway. Okay, so the final lecture for Rave Anatomy 2, Ra takes you through advanced imaging, what he called the new synthesis. So this advanced imaging was really developed out of rave psychology and primary health system to support professionals that worked in these areas. And so he's, you know, his final lecture is really about talking about this and taking us through the biomechanics. So that's also something good to learn because a lot of people look at these charts and they go, "What is that?" So he'll take you through that. So that'll be good. And that's basically it. We've got 11 lectures in Rave Anatomy 1, 11 lectures in Rave Anatomy 2. And, you know, I just thank you that you've all come here to listen to this and to let me do this. have somebody to talk to. And the Rave Anatomy series, again, is 2 home study courses, 22 audio lectures, 21 hours, 21 minutes, 2 ebooks, and these 3 videos on bass, tone, and color. And here's the link, and the link is going to be put up in this room, so you can just click on it and go directly to it. Also, I'm providing a PDF of these slides so that you can have these slides and review them and look through them and any of that. So you can enjoy that. And I'm just going to look and see if there were any questions posted that that I can answer. And so just give me 1 second. Let's see. Let's see if I have any questions. Someone has asked, how do I know what year I am in the cycle of the 7-year deconditioning process? And really, it starts when you start practicing your strategy and authority. So if you can go back and figure out when that was, and you really started experimenting with your strategy and authority, and then just begin to count forward, then you'll know where you're at. Usually, in my experience with myself and with other people, that when you hit about the midpoint, 3.5 years, there's usually some big revelation or big happening in one's life where you have some kind of a breakthrough. I mean, there's lots of breakthroughs through the deconditioning process, but 3.5 years, there's the midpoint, something usually happens. So anyway, let's see. Oh, thank you. Christina says that was beautiful. Thank you. Okay, that's about it. Oh, where do we find the PDF? It should be at the bottom. You'll see it says Rave Anatomy Webinar PDF, and we'll make it available. We'll send out an email also to people so they can have it and download it. So, and yes, a replay will be available. That was another question, and we should have it available probably by tomorrow. And let's see. And one question is, I'm a reflector, so how much could be important in this study for me? Well, I think it's important for everybody, actually, I really do. And being a reflector, you are, interacting with the rest of the world that is not a reflector, because reflectors are only 1%. So the more you know about, the world that you're interacting with, probably the better it's going to be for you. And let's see. And you'll get the illustrations as well. And that's about all the questions. So anyway, thank you all for coming. I really appreciate it. And until next time, bye-bye for now.